Hey guys, Brad here. We've got the all new RS-X7 version 2 in stock. I'll be going over a full review in the next video, but just wanted to get this setup guide out there for those of you who've pre-ordered. This right here is the Pro version, which includes the 4x32 hunting scope. Alright, let's get started. So we include some Allen keys with the package, but you're also going to need a Phillips screwdriver, some sort of adjustable mini wrench or pliers, and also a rubber mallet. This is optional, but it helps with installing the main barrel, which can be a tight fit. I've also got a ruler here just so I can tell you which length of screws to use for which parts. Let's begin with the top rail of the main barrel. We've got this long spring, a black spring end piece which will guide the ball bearings into the chamber, a second black spring end piece which will go onto the other side, and then a steel pin, and then finally the top rail. Firstly, we're going to insert the larger of these two black spring ends into the main barrel. Next, get hold of the spring and guide that into the rail from the right hand side. Just feed that through. Grab the steel pin and the other spring end piece. Just notice the orientation here with the lip on the bottom side. Next, feed the steel pin through the small hole. You may need to use some pliers or something to push this through so that it's even on both sides. Next, get hold of the smaller of the two springs and feed that into the other side. That's it for now. Let's place this to one side. Now we're going to set up the rear stock. The silver hex bolts are 30mm. The smaller black ones here are 10mm. These silver bolts with the knurled edges are 24mm. Let's begin with feeding this black metal tube through here. Screw on the silver ring. Next, attach this rear bracket, and you're going to use one of these silver knurled screws just to secure this into place. Looks good so far. Next, use one of the 10mm black bolts just to secure the metal tube in place. Okay, that's all sorted. Let's continue by snapping on this top part. There's 4 screw holes, and we're going to use the silver knurled screws to fasten this into place. So we're all done with the rear stock at this point. Let's put this to one side, as well as the other parts here, which we'll use to attach the stock later in the video. Okay, so let's move on to the front handle. Now this should come pre-assembled, but just in case, I'm going to zoom in just so you can see the location of the metal clip, as well as the spring and the trigger. So we're going to sandwich these together, and then just use a single gold screw. This one is 23mm, and this is going to go into the top hole here like so, along with a nut on the other side. For the 2 holes at the bottom, we're going to use some 31mm gold screws. These final 3 screws are 31mm also, and we'll be using these to attach the front grip to the sliding mechanism that we'll be building next. So just put these to one side for the time being. Next, we're going to build the sliding mechanism. We've got the right side arm here, and we're going to attach these 2 metal arms. I'll hold them up to the camera just so you can see the orientation. Okay, so let's get these two attached, and for that we're going to use these black 16mm hex bolts. Perfect, these two arms are now bolted in. Next we're going to attach these metal side pieces. Here's one that I built earlier. Basically it just consists of this long black hex screw, which is around 45mm, and this is pretty straightforward. The bolt is going to go through this metal tube, and then you'll secure it with a nut on the other side. So you can see here that I've got the other side already built. I just want to show you the orientation. Just notice that the black bolts face upwards. So when you attach the right side, you're going to want the bolts to face the same way. To attach these, you'll be using the smaller 10mm black bolts. The left side's now complete, and we're going to attach it to the central part. It's going to sit at the top, leaving one bolt hole free at the bottom, which we're going to use to attach this ball bearing type screw, which helps to reduce friction as you're sliding this part along the main barrel. Okay, that looks good. We can now attach the front handle that we built earlier using 3 31mm gold screws. Perfect, this section is now complete. You can see here the front trigger is working correctly. All good, let's put this to one side. Next up, we're going to install the rear grips and trigger. You can see here that I've already got the main silver tube installed, as well as the two springs. Here's a close-up of the metal tube, just so you can see the correct orientation. Moving back to the rear, you can see there's one bolt hole. In order to install the springs, you'll find a small metal rod that looks like a lighter flint. Here's a close-up. You can see that the smaller spring is at the rear, and also that the hooks of both of the springs face outwards. We've got the trigger and the cog gear in this shot. Just notice the correct orientation. This will be the final position once they're installed. First up, let's install this cog piece using the smaller of the two springs. All we're doing is looping it through the small hole and then pushing it into place, and we'll be using one of the 30mm screws to lock this into position. Okay, perfect. So we've got the screw in place along with a nut on the rear, and we can now move on to installing the trigger. This piece is going to attach to the remaining spring like so. Feed it through and then use another 30mm gold screw to secure it into place. Awesome. Okay, so the trigger is now correctly set up. You can check this works by releasing the trigger and then manually resetting the cog again, just to make sure that the teeth are facing up. There's another screw here. This one is 35mm, and we're going to install that just below the other two screws on the right. Perfect, looks good. Just another quick check that the trigger is working correctly. Next, we're going to install the two sections of the hand grip. These two halves just snap together. We're going to use a single 22mm gold screw. This section also just snaps right on. You can see here there are two vacant screw holes on the left. Just make sure everything lines up. Again, these two screws are 22mm. Okay, the handle is now secure, and we've got 3 screws left. The one furthest to the right connecting to the metal bar is 35mm, and the other two are 30mm. let's get these installed. Perfect. Okay, so this next section is going to sit right above the silver tube. It houses the magnet that prevents the ball bearings from rolling out prior to shooting. The fit here is pretty snug, so you may need to use the rubber mallet here just to make sure everything is nicely aligned so you can install the 3 screws. These 3 screws are 40mm. Next up, we're going to install the rail. I've actually forgotten to show in this section of the video, but you can actually install the rubber bands at this point prior to securing the rail to the handle. You can see here that there are 4 screw holes, and these are 20mm. As I mentioned, you can install the bands at this point prior to tightening the screws. Okay, so these 4 screws are now installed, and we can now take the top rail that we assembled earlier and position it like so. Next, we're going to slide on the front handle. It should just slide right on. Just notice that it's sliding freely. There shouldn't be too much friction here. To secure everything, you're going to install this end cap with a 30mm screw. Again, you may need to gently tap the end cap into position using the rubber mallet. At this point, you can see that the slingshot is pretty much assembled. The one thing I forgot to do was install the rubber bands, so let's do that now. You're going to need to remove the 4 screws that connect the rail, and the band should just slide right in. Reattach the rail using the 4 screws and you should be all set. To install the bands, you're going to want to work in pairs, so install the lower set first, like so, and then just repeat for the top set. Okay, we're pretty much done at this point. The bands are installed and you can now test that the trigger works okay now that there's load and tension in the system. You can now use the slingshot as is, but we'll go ahead and install the rear stock. This is just a case of using the 30mm bolts to secure this part to the rear grip and then tightening everything up. The rear stock should just screw right in. Job done. For those of you who've ordered the scope, this is pretty straightforward. Just use the small black hex key to secure the scope mounts to the rail. And there you have it. We'll be back soon with a full review, including some outdoor test shots. But if you run into any issues with setup, just ping me a note, brad@hammersurvival.com, and I'll make sure to get you up and running in no time at all. Cheers guys, see you soon.